Hey, what's up guys? Ryan Schultz here from E39 Source in Escondido, California. This is my 2002 540i E39. We're going to be doing a bit of a DIY today on these rear door quarter window seals or gaskets. I'll say at the top, it is not a complete DIY. I am not removing this glass and replacing the seal myself. That's something I sublet to a trusted local glass installer. I would encourage you to do the same. It's very specific how this goes in. It has a depth rating as well as a positioning rating on an X and Y axis, so it is best to let the professionals do that. And it is glued into the car. This isn't something you can remove with standard tools. It's real common on these E39s now as they've aged, especially on vehicles that have spent time in a warmer climate, that this rubber gasket around the rear quarter windows, particularly in the rear, just dries out, starts flaking apart. Not only does it look really bad, but it also means you get some wind noise on the highway back here, which is less than ideal. I haven't noticed a ton of that from this car, but we have a customer car here, a 2000 M5 in Anthracite, that's undergoing the same procedure. And I had the parts for my 540, so I thought we might as well just get them done at the same time. So my technician and I went through this car yesterday and detrimmed the rear doors as much as they need to be for that glass installer to come out and just work with the glass. You can of course go to a dealer or body shop or a glass installer and pay them to do all of this. It's just a lot more work and labor, and it's unlikely that they will have the E39 experience and knowledge to not damage these very expensive shadow line trim pieces around the door that must be removed. So without further ado, let's dig in. A brief overview of tools and what's going to be required for the job. We'll start with the tools. Need some assortment of mallets, a little ball peen hammer helps, some non-marring plastic pry tools. I really like this wide blade one for removing some of the trims. And then for your smaller areas, we've got something like this. These are the Schwaben brand from ECS Tuning. Generic trim removal tool, and then an array of Phillips, flatheads, a little pick. And if your E39 is an LCI example, that's September 2000 and later, you will need a T20 instead of a Phillips driver to remove the rear door panel. Now a brief overview of what needs to come off the car to gain access here. This lower trim, if yours is shadow line like this, the matte shadow line or the chrome, they'll work the same way. It doesn't really make much of a difference. We'll need to take that off. We're going to be removing this secondary B pillar, as we'll call it, and then this upper door trim, in addition to the weather stripping seal that's right on top of the door here. And then inside the door, we need to remove this piece. And to get that off, we have to remove the door panel. Additionally, we'll need to remove this inside of the B.5 pillar and then the plastic surround on the interior of the door that goes all the way down. So this is a non-sunshade car. It's actually a sunshade car from factory, though I have deleted the shades from the rear door panels. The M5 still has its shades, so I'll have a clip in here at some point about what's different with the sunshades and how to take that apart. But for this video, we won't be focusing on that since the car doesn't have it anymore. I'm gonna go ahead and start inside the door, and inside the rear handle, you will see a little cover plug, a little trap door that's hiding the fastener for our T20 or Phillips screw. So we get in there with a pick tool and carefully pry out the cover to reveal the fastener. With the fastener out of the way, the only things holding this door panel on the door shell itself is essentially all of the white plastic clips that go around the perimeter of the door. Now, if you do have the sunshades, you'll have some additional steps here. You'll need to pry off whatever trim you have here. If that's wood, if it's metal, if it's technical graphite like this, kind of use your fingers and just carefully pry it out. About every 6 inches, there's a tab that goes back into the door. What you don't want to do is grab here and just pull. It will bend, it will crack, you will damage it, so be careful with that. That'll expose 4 screws, 2 recessed and 2 visible. The visible screws, approximately there and there, hold the sunshade, the primary shade, to the door panel. You can leave those. The other 2 screws that are recessed hold the sunshade to the door. You want to pull those screws out of the door panel. For sunshade vehicles, your smaller quarter window shade is very, very fragile and delicate and difficult to remove. There's a little slot at the top, and you'll use some sort of a pick tool, preferably one with maybe a 45-degree bend in it instead of a 90. And you'll go in there, and at the top of the door, there's a little bit of a gold tab. We can look on this car. You want to pry that tab upwards, which will allow the shade to hinge out. We've actually removed the tab here, but that's where it would be. Sticks out like a little finger. So pry that up, pull the shade out, it hinges at the bottom, and then you'll be able to pull it away from the vehicle entirely. In the case of my 540, we're just going to start by releasing all those clips I mentioned. So I like to take this pry tool here, gently wedge it in between the door panel and shell, and pull and twist. First couple are always the hardest until you can get some fingers back there. You may want to have these on hand. It's common that they break or have been broken in the past. The part number ends in 500, and they're real cheap. Just buy a bunch of them. So with that starting to come off, you can just use your fingers and give a nice little tug around the perimeter of the door, and it frees itself. At this point, you'll be in one of two situations. You'll be like me, where your center clip has already released from the door, and the only thing holding the panel on is up here. It snaps into this black gloss or chrome trim by the window. If yours still feels very tight and you can't grab the handle and move it like that, it's because the clip I'll show you in a few moments is still stuck on the door, and you're best not to just pull and pull and pull. You'll break the door panel. We'll come up with a solution for that in a moment. But in the meantime, we can come up here and gently grab the door panel, start to pull it away from the trim like that. You'll notice the gap. Continue to work along, and off we are. Now we'll need to carefully slide the door handle through the hole in the door. Then we have electrical connections for our tweeter, the window switch, and the puddle light down at the bottom of the door. So we'll pull it away and disconnect those carefully. If your door panel is stuck at the handle on this middle clip and it just will not come off, it's this guy. This is on the inside of the panel. This clip slides up into the inside of the handle and then goes over this right here. And there's two little prongs on this brass clip that need to be pushed down like this. Now a set of pliers like needle nose won't work. You need something shaped like this. So some Oetiker clamp pliers. They have an orange handle. I found them at Harbor Freight. They're like $2. That's the perfect tool to put on there. Pinch those tabs together, and then you can rescue this off the door. But how do you get the door off? Well, because this slides, make all your other detachments first. All of these white clips are on the perimeter. Undo that. Undo this along the top as it snaps in, and then just lift the panel up about 1.5 inches, and it'll leave this on the door shell, like right there, and you'll have the panel off in no time. So as you're pulling the door panel away, just lift it up and over the lock rod to clear that. Door handle fits through the door if you're careful, and you want to leave, if it looks like this, you want to leave that green sheathing snapped in the handle like that. If you pull it too hard like this and it comes out, your door handle is not going to spring back to its closed position, even when it's reinstalled on the door completely, and it's going to stay open like that. So the fix, of course, is putting it back as it was, pulling it out, letting it snap in, and stay in that little collar. I have the BAV sound speakers in here now, so my connector looks a little bit different, but that's the tweeter. You unplug that from here. The window switch has some insulation on it. Don't lose that. Pull the insulation out, stick your finger in the hole, and push the switch out towards the inside, at which point you can disconnect it. And our final attachment point is the puddle light. You can carefully push the pedal light out of the door panel and then just disconnect it like that. It's a good time now to take a look at your door vapor barrier. I have already resealed all of them on this 540. It's not the prettiest work in the world, but they are sealed properly. You should not be able to grab this barrier at any location and pull it away from the door. You want a watertight seal all the way around. And it's ultimately why the bottom of these door panels start to rot or mold or get really weak, is because they get water exposure from these things leaking. It's also why you'll see a lot of these sills are in super rough shape, because they sit in moisture. Continuing work inside the door, we now want to remove this piece of trim. And on a non-sunshade car, it's all one piece. All of these clips snap it down onto the door. We want to carefully pry it up and off of the door, and it will bend, it will snap, it will kink. You'll never make it straight again once it's bent. So what we want to do is just go around and get each one to release. Don't release one and just yank it. I promise you it will bend. Take your time, release each one individually, and slowly remove it from the car. My approach for removing that trim was simply using the wide pry tool and a mallet at each clip, 2 or 3 light taps, and it comes off. Now for the non-sunshade cars, we have this little cover panel here, and it kind of snaps onto the metal B.5 pillar, as I'll call it. So we can get in there and gently pry out one side and peel it off. I started in the bottom right. Once it's off like that, it kind of just falls out. When you put it back in, it's going to hinge from the top and then snap back on. You'll see that with that off, we've revealed 3 Phillips head screws. Those are the screws that hold on this outer piece of trim, but this won't come out yet, so we can leave those screws put. Next thing we've got to do is remove this black inner trim that goes all the way down. You'll see that the wire for this, and there is a wire in this is the entrapment function. So if you have your hand or some object in the window as it's going up, it goes up to the top, it hits that, that's a switch, and it will stop the window and actually lower it, so you can pull out whatever got stuck in there. So we'll need to disconnect the electrical for that right here. It's got some tape on there. That's just electrical wiring tape. You can replace that. And the only fastener holding this thing on is over here. There's a little bit of a plug rivet that we can pry out with a pry tool. With the rivet out, we're gonna shift our attention kind of back inside, and this thing hinges onto the door, so you can pop a pry tool in there and start to work it out, and then just follow it along the entire vehicle. For your sunshade cars, it's more or less the same process, but you have your hooks right here and right here to hold up the primary sunshade. There's little trap doors in those hooks. Use a little screwdriver or a pick tool. Open up those doors and then take out the Phillips head screws that also attach this trim to the door. The most delicate points are going to be right up in this corner and in this corner. Don't bend it too much. Don't ask it to do too much. Just get some tools in there. Take your time. It might help to put the window down so you can see on the outside. And it's just like a bit of a claw that goes up inside the metal door here. So with that out of the way completely, we're ready to shift our focus back to the outside of the door. The next piece to come off is going to be this weather strip that goes along the top of the door. We're going to start back here at the rear of the door with a pry tool. We can get behind this rubber, and there's going to be two little plastic kind of tabs that snap into the door. So we want to pry those out and away from the door like that. And at this point, you can just grab this whole trim and work it off of the door. And we only need to peel this trim back to right here. There's no need to remove it from the forward edge of the rear door. There's metal in there that'll bend pretty easily, so just let it kind of hang out right here at the corner. With the seal out of the way now, that's exposed these little jaws or fingers that are expanded to hold this outer and upper trim strip on the door. And there's two ways to remove that trim strip. You can use a little screwdriver or a chisel to bend these tabs slightly inwards, closer together, and that will allow the trim to come off of the clip. Or the jaws that we see here are part of clips that cinch on the door like that. And yesterday we removed the trim with the clips. I haven't decided which way I'm going to go today. But before we do that, we do need to remove the waist trim strip here. And this piece is very delicate and quite costly, so we don't want to bend that. And the way to avoid it is to use our wide plastic pry tool. You can even put some tape on here if you're worried about the paint. Just wedge it in there and start to wiggle every couple inches and just keep prying it up until it's all loose, and then you can pull it off. If you just get one corner loose and pull it off, it's going to bend and kink the hell out of it. A little bit of tape's a good idea here to prevent any scratching or marring on the paint finish. You can put it on the trim as well. I started back here. It came pretty easily until right here, and it got real tight. So I moved up here, and every couple inches move the tool back, and just don't flex it too much. So with that out of the way, we're able to come back over here, and I think I'm going to go ahead and just bring these together with a mallet and a chisel. Get all of them. There are two next to each other all the way here at the forward edge of the door. And with that off, you can carefully pry this out and away from the door. Here's what we're trying to do to that clip. Just bring those arms in together, and then you'll be able to pry that outer shadow line away from the car. With that done, I went ahead and put the window down. We're going to take this inner gasket / window guide channel here, just kind of peel it out from behind this lower B pillar piece. That's going to free that up quite a bit as we attempt to remove that. And I mentioned those 3 Phillips head screws on the inside, top, center, and bottom. We're going to undo those. What we don't want to happen is for this trim to fall down into the door. If it does, it's likely it'll rub against the door right here and scratch the heck out of it. So we don't really want to do that. So hold on to it while you take the screws out, and then it's just going to lift out a little bit and up. With the vertical trim out, this is about as far as we can get, short of removing the glass here. So that's going to save you a ton of labor time, probably in the ballpark of 2 or 3 hours by your glass installer. And he's likely going to break stuff. So we're going to go ahead and copy paste, do the left side, the driver's side now. Then we'll have the installer out tomorrow to dig that glass out and replace the seal.
But this is just me going OCD, blacking it out, making it real nice.
No, but that's the thing. Most people don't do half-ass work.
Excuse the now dirty car, but we're done. These things look great. way better than before, a little quieter on the highway, and now when I wipe these windows down, I'm not digging out chunks of deteriorating rubber. The reassembly process is the opposite of the disassembly process. Everything kind of fits back in. Just do everything in reverse order since it does matter. A quick little teaser for the next project here. We've got a fair bit of de-trimming on this 540 right now, and it's going to be getting a little bit of work for the next week as I go on vacation. So we'll get an update film soon. Do the M5 as well. It's been a long time. I'm way behind on that. There's a different trunk lid on this car now. I haven't decided if the spoiler's staying or not. It's obviously off an M5. Leave me some input down there if I should leave it or pull it off and keep it an original 540 look. But stay tuned for updates. Thanks for watching this one. Good luck with your window seals. That makes a big difference. We'll talk to you in the next E39 source video. Take care.